And we are live. Welcome, guys, to another live episode. So today we're kind of going a little live. It's 10 p.m. local time in the Eastern time right now as we're going live. Which is interesting, is today we're going to be talking about something which is going to be very important. I'm going to be showing you guys some stats. Now, I want to tell you guys a story, which is interesting. So I'm actually going to be traveling a few weeks from now, and I decided, you know what, I want to stay at a fairly decent, okay hotel, right? So I went ahead, I looked at this hotel. One of the few things I was looking at because I was determining if I wanted to go out of California or wanted to stay out in Florida. So I was looking at a few things, and then I was like, all right. So one of the key things I really liked was I wanted to see if I could get somewhere that had like a jacuzzi or hot tub in it, right? I know, kind of fancy, but not really. Because if you want a good rate on hotels, I'm going to tell you one secret is go on weekdays, because usually on weekdays there's usually a discount on the rooms, because usually at that point in time there's no one that's like, the rooms are empty, so they got to fill the rooms regardless, right? So I was like, I found the hotel. I'm like, you know what, this is the place, I'm gonna stay here. I booked it. It was a decent amount. I covered it. I was like, you know what, it's fine. I was excited. I was looking forward to it. I told my girlfriend, I was like, listen, you're gonna love this. All right. So I booked it. This was a no-name place. I'd never stayed here before. I'm not gonna drop names, because I believe if I drop names, you guys are probably gonna go research it and be like, oh my god, this is the place. Don't stay there. I don't want to do that. So I'm not gonna drop names. So I looked this place up, and I booked it. I was excited. Finally, okay. So it's coming in a few weeks towards, going for the trip. I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go on Google and find the reviews. So I'm gonna go on Google. I'm gonna Google this company. I'm gonna see this hotel. I'm gonna see the reviews, and oh my god, it was 1 star. The place is old and molded, 2 star. And I'm like, wait. They're like, even the jacuzzi, the reason why I actually wanted to stay there, which was a jacuzzi, they're like, the jacuzzi doesn't even work sometimes. It was like, it's broken. It's like the walls looks like it needs a new paint job. It was just all sorts of things. And I'm like, okay. So there was a part of me that was like, all right, I guess this is not gonna work for me. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm not staying there. I was like, no, I'm not staying there. So I went and I looked up another hotel, and I was like, no, you know what? I'm not trusting no name brand hotels, because obviously the no name hotels are usually the ones that usually come with a lot of issues. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna stay at a resort or hotel that I know the name, because obviously I know that they've been consistent. The key word here is they've been consistent. Like, for instance, you look at a Marriott, for instance, or Hilton. You know the type of service you're going to get because you've been staying there for a period of time, so you know that they are consistent at delivering a specific few results, right? So that's it. The that brings me to the topic I want to talk about today. Is I want to talk about basically the importance of building a brand, right? And the brand basically means there's a reason why people will basically, you can have a Nike shoe, and you can have a no-name shoe, and you basically, people will pay, Nike can cost them $3 to make a shoe, and they can mark it up for $400, and people will pay for it. But you have the same shoe that has a Nike brand on it, selling for $50, and no one is going to buy it, right? Or you might have a few people hesitant to it. Apple comes out with an iPhone, right? Like, I'll tell you guys something. I have there's two phones here. I have an iPhone and I have an Android, right? This phone came free. It's a Motorola G, whatever it is. This phone came free with a switching to a new plan or whatever it was, right? But I use this phone more than I use this phone, because this phone is faster, much easier to use, simpler, and has only thing that's bad about this is the camera quality. The only thing good about this is basically the camera quality. But I use this more. But then again, people will basically line up to pay $1,000 for just a phone, a simple phone, as opposed to paying for something that's basically practically free. And that's because of the one thing, which is basically that is brand. That's because people will trust more in a brand. They trust more of a brand. They trust more that a brand will basically deliver the product, deliver the service, because they've been consistent at it. Now, this is what's important, because I want you guys to go and see the importance of a brand. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you guys a prank that was played by Payless. Payless, if you know, is a shoe store company. They usually sell low end shoes, decent quality, but they sell them for a lower markup, and it's very affordable. So they were able to get people to pay premium dollars for shoes that were going for $20. So and the reason why they were able to do that was because of they were able to do something, and what they were able to do was something called branding. And it's a little bit of a longer video. It's about a 5-minute video. I'm going to talk and break it down as we go ahead, and then I'm going to give you guys a few stats at the end of the video. So just make sure you stick around, because you're going to want to pick up on the stats here. So this is basically a Payless prank.
We rebranded for a weekend.
Yo, what's going on YouTube? It's your boy SEO Official back with another video going on. So
let's skip this here.
Rebrand their entire store and the name, and they also increased their prices a lot, and the results are quite interesting. So what I'm going to do now is play the rest of the clip, and I'll be back in a minute.
We at Payless wondered how much people would pay for our shoes if they didn't know they were our shoes. So we rebranded for a weekend. We built a fake luxury store, filled it with avant-garde sculptures and displays. We even hired a full team of sales associates. Then we filled all the shelves with Payless shoes and jacked up our prices as much as 1,800%. And finally, we gave it what you might call a fancier name. Welcome to Palessi.
Palessi is just such high quality, high fashion. It's taking your shoe game like up to the next level.
It's like very, European, very, upscale.
The guests at the Palessi grand opening party had no idea any of these shoes were from Payless.
It looks really well made. I love a heel that's kind of chunky because it means you can like jump up and down, do some backflips maybe.
It's a stunner. It's one of those shoes that you're just going to get compliments on over and over again.
Elegant, sophisticated, and versatile.
For me to experience this as an Italian designer is amazing.
I could definitely wear this to like a Met Gala dinner. Just think it's so unique.
We'll definitely spend $295 on a pump like this.
I would pay like $300-$400 for these shoes for sure. I'd probably spend about $500 on this.
Compliments are great and all, but would these fashionista influencer types open up their wallets for our shoes? We watched from a room backstage as our first customer approached the register. We all celebrated the first sale, but then we witnessed more and more shoes selling. Shoes sold for $250, $400, and even $600. But before any of them left, we let them know the shoes were actually from Payless.
What? No way.
You've got to be kidding me.
Shut up. Are you serious? No. Wait, did I just pay too much?
I love Christian Siriano. Oh, I would support this.
Anyone who bought the shoes got them from us as a free gift, but we proved that they could sell for over 10 times the normal Payless price. Now anyone can come into Payless and get these same exact shoes for as low as $19.99.
So what's interesting is what's interesting. I'm gonna come back to me here, you guys. You guys just saw the power of basically building a brand. It's the power, okay? The power of, you see what they say. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. You know there's something. There's a saying in marketing. Is not even, I don't know if it's a saying in marketing. It's something I just made up, but in a sense, it's to the same message. You can present the same message to the same person 1,000 times, but the way you have to understand is the way people perceive it is going to be based off of them. For instance, like there's a lot of people that are going to be like, dude, I wouldn't fall for that. Like, come on, like, dude, everyone knows, like, most high-end stores are basically overpriced. They overcharge you stuff, but guess what? People will pay for it because what's funny is the iPhone, whatever is coming out. Let's say the iPhone 14, 15 comes out. People are like, I paid $3,000 for this phone. It becomes a bragging right. Okay, versus, oh, I got this one for free, or I got this one for $50. You know what's interesting, and I started learning about stuff is people want to feel, you can either sell your product for either solving a problem, or you can sell a product that basically elevates your status. And basically an iPhone, a luxury brand, like for instance, my girlfriend just got some decent, nice handbags, and she was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm taking pictures in it. Because the thing is, is people want to basically identify or basically either buy a product that either solves a problem or basically elevates the status. Now, when you're selling products that basically solves a problem, for the degree or the amount of money you can charge for that product is in direct correlation to how much, the pain that people feel. Like, for instance, if you're a doctor and you basically have the cure for, a mysterious ailment, people will give you a life fortune for it. Right? It doesn't matter because they know that, they want the pain to go away. The same thing is if your product is a product that elevates your status, they will pay more for it. That's the reason why some people will pay $19.99 at Payless, but then go to Palessi and pay, $600 for it. And that's because of a brand, because that brand elevates the status, because it's not about your product. It's the perception of your product. Now, what's interesting fact about this is the reason why I'm sharing this statistic in this states, which is the stats which is I want you to think about it from your perspective as a business owner, in a sense as to you running a business, or even as a person, even as an individual. Let's say you're an individual, you're in a workplace, right? People don't perceive you based off of the way you dress. Is very important. Because if a millionaire dresses like he is homeless, you would see him as a homeless person. But if a homeless person dresses like in a 3-piece decked out suit, you would see him as a millionaire. Now, it all depends if you want to control perception, but if you are in a position where you have to sell your product, you have to understand that you need to have the ability to control the perception, which means you have the ability to build a brand. And the reason why I'm bringing this up to you guys is I'm bringing this up to you so you can see is in the sense as to most businesses don't ever invest in a brand, they invest in a product. But the thing is, if you're selling just a product, you sell it for $19.99. If you're selling a brand, you can sell it for $1900, right? The downside here is brands take longer to build. It takes longer to build a brand than it is to, a brand like Nike is a brand that takes 30-40 years to build. It's not something that's overnight, right? But the thing is, you invest in a brand, and then over a long period of time, people will pay you premium dollar for it because they know that you've been consistently delivering value. That's what a brand is all about. Is the key word is consistency. Now, what is the one way in which you can build a brand, right? What's interesting was I was doing some research on this, and I found out that most businesses, how can it really make a difference for? Thanks, Casino Masters. I'm skeptical about branding. How can it really make a difference for my small business? Okay, so what's interesting is how it can make a difference for a small businesses. I want you to think about it from a perspective. Before I go ahead and answer this question here, I was surprised and shocked when I found these statistics and this data to basically show that basically only about 27% of actual businesses were actually in a position where they were actually, using any sort of one. 27% of small businesses don't have a website. 40% don't want a website. 20% of businesses use social media in place of website. They're like, all right, I post on social media. You can go ahead and book a call with me by giving a call on my personal number with a Gmail account, right? And then you also have your 27% of small businesses believe a website isn't relevant to their industry. 35% of businesses feel as though their business is too small to warrant a website, right? It's because you're being cheap, right? And then you have for the 73% of businesses who do want to invest in a website, 66% of businesses who invest spend less than 10 grand. I'm not designing a website, so I'm not going to comment on it. 54, but the thing is, the stats keep going crazy and crazy. But I want to bring this full circle because you might be thinking, all right? Because I believe I was boxing earlier today. So most of you guys know you jab, cross, jab, 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 right? And he's like, you keep dropping. He's like, you keep dropping your hand. You're dropping your hand, and I was like, yeah, you're right. He's like, that's because you have tunnel vision. He's like, you have tunnel vision. That's what when you go for the jab, the right hand, you leave it open. He's like, you leave it open, you basically right there, someone can bam, hit you in the face. And I was like, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. Most business owners have a tunnel vision. Okay, you have a ton of vision in the sense as to you're only focused in the sense as to your side of things, not focused in the sense as to how your customers are seeing it. Think about it from the other person's perspective, not just your perspective. The same thing as well. If I was a relationship counselor and I was counseling people in relationships and they're like having a fight and they're having an argument, I'd be like, listen, have you guys actually spoken to each other to listen to each other's point of view? For instance, the wife is pissed off at the husband is pissed off at the wife. But the reality is they're both pissed off. But the reason why they're pissed off is they're both self-isolated, thinking about themselves. And they never once sat down and be like, you know what? Let me just ask her, why are you pissed off? What about ABC that happened got you pissed off? And he's like, oh, really? Now I can understand that perspective because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Right? People don't care about genuinely. They care, but for people, it's like people. It's like I'll give you one tip if you want to increase the revenue in your business. When people walk in the front door of your small business, give them a small gift, something small like a candy or whatever it is. Give them a pen or something like, hey, thank you for shopping with us. It doesn't put pressure on them, but it creates basically reciprocity because people will see that as, oh, this person cares about me. Or simple, before you talk to someone, just ask them a simple question. How are you doing today? When I call someone, they're like, hey, how can I help you? I'm like, hey, before we go in and have any conversation in that matter, how are you doing today? And then all of a sudden, you can take the most pissed off person. They go calm and they're like, you know what? Yeah, this person actually cares about me. So you know what? I'm going to go ahead and listen to them. That is the same concept and the same perception. Now, what is interesting, because in my research and as I was digging the data to basically find something we could go ahead and talk about today, how many percent of, you basically think about it from a perspective of how many percent of consumers or people before they do business with you do you think are going to research you? Take a guess. What percentage do you think is going to actually go ahead and research you? Okay. What is the percentage? If you know, what is the percent of people that you think are going to research you? There is 76% of consumers look at online presence before physically visiting a business. 76% people will look you up. I've been looked up before people even come on the podcast. Like, well, I watched a few every episode. I Googled you. I YouTubed you. I checked on Instagram. I followed on TikTok, which, by the way, guys, if you want to find me on any of the social media platforms that's out there, it could be, what do you call it? Any social media platform that you're basically going to, just go ahead and type basically the real Igweh right here. This, but just you find me on any social media out there that's available and known to man, Twitter, TikTok, or whatever it is, right? But most people go, you know what? I research you, and I'm like, you know what? Hey, good. I want to come. I want to go ahead and show up your podcast. Which, by the way, tomorrow we're going to be having a live guest with Kate Adams. Phenomenal. She's absolutely phenomenal. We're going to talk about marketing. We're going to talk about advertising, and that's going to be 1 p.m., guys. So make sure you tune in for that 1 p.m. live that we're going to be having tomorrow. Phenomenal guest. Now, the key thing, let's go ahead and come back in here. 76% of people will research you. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean for you? Most of you might be listening to this and be like, well, if they don't like what they see, they can, I'm not going to go ahead and build a website. I'm not going to go ahead and invest in social media. I'm not going to go ahead and do that, because why would I go ahead and invest in all of that on social media when, you know what, it might not see a return? I don't want to spend so much money. We listen. If you go research the stats, most business owners don't know the stats. Is less than 87%. So basically, only about 13% of small business owners make over 100 grand a year. Only about 13% make about over 100 grand a year. Now think about it. So which means there's 87% of people that make less than 100 grand, because most businesses don't make that much money because they don't invest in themselves. Because the thing about branding is this, is you don't know it's working until it starts working. You don't know that you've seen a result from your brand building until you start seeing a result from your brand building. But you don't know what's working until it starts working. Okay? You don't know it's working until it starts working. That on its own is basically the key concept to keep in mind when you're talking about branding. That is the key concept to keep in mind when you're talking about how does a brand basically help me build my business? How does branding help me in any way, shape, or form to make my business grow? How does branding help me in A, Y, Z help me? It's because you have to think about it from an effort. It's like pouring and depositing in a bucket. Okay, I'm going to say this. It's like pouring and depositing a bucket. So growing up, me growing up, I had to basically fetch water from a well and into a bucket, and fetch water into a well into a bucket so I could use it to go take a shower. This was more than 2 decades ago. So fetch water in the well so I could go straight take it in the bucket. Now, what's interesting is you have all this moments where in which I'm just pouring water in this bucket, pouring water, but I'm not seeing any results from it. I'm pouring water, not seeing it, And then finally, now I have to take this heavy bucket and walk literally a 0.5 mile walk and go and shower with it. But here's the key thing: is I'm depositing into something, and then even though it still costs me even more effort, but eventually I see the reward. That's the key to branding. Branding is a thing where it shows up in consistent efforts. It's the fact that you keep going and doing over a period of time. You will eventually see the results. And in your local area, there's different ways in which you can build a brand. You wanna pretty much identify. I want you to think about it in the sense as to when people see you, they need to identify you with something, right? If Nike decided to sell cars, no one would buy it. You know why? Because no one knows Nike as a car sales company. Okay. If Tesla decides to sell, let me say, what's one thing? Handbags. If Tesla started selling handbags, you'd be like, this is not real. This is made in China. Okay. If whatever it is decides to, it's the same concept. If Mercedes came out with a lunchbox, you'd be like, what? Or a Mercedes camera, you'd be like, what? I know you guys as a car company. That's the same thing. It's an identity. A brand is an identity, right? People formulate an identity to you. So they know, like, if I'm looking for a car, I go to Mercedes. If I'm looking for groceries, I don't go to a Mercedes car dealership because I know they don't have it. All right. If I'm looking for coffee, right? And if Volkswagen starts making coffee, I don't go there and be like, oh, what? Volkswagen makes coffee. No. Because the thing is this, when it comes to a brand, is you have to be very niche focused. This podcast is a podcast. Well, technically it's a solo podcast. It was a YouTube channel, then it just became a podcast because I just talk about stuff. But I focus on talking about business and the things that I know about, right? I'm not going to be on this podcast telling you how to cook. If you came to my podcast or this channel, you're like, oh, Emmanuel is going to teach me how to cook. I'm not going to teach you how to cook. I don't know how to cook. I'm last person. I'm going to tell you a funny story. One time I cooked. All right, this is a don't tell anyone. Even though like 200 people watching this, don't tell anyone. So I saw this recipe online one day, and I was like, you know what? This is a fancy recipe. This is super cool. I wanted to make this stew. So I don't remember how the recipe actually worded it, but what I saw was it said boil oil. Okay. I think you guys know where this is going. Okay. Don't make fun of me. It said boil oil. And then at some point it said, I don't know if I read this right or this was just me basically, using my own interpretation here. It said boil. They said boil oil, and I boiled the oil. And then it said somewhere, I think I read it. It said pour water into this boiling oil. I was like to increase the quantity of the oil. As you guys would know, if for some of you was like, Emmanuel, what are you talking about? Let me ask you. Let's Google this. What happens when you add water to boiling oil? Okay, let's see. When you add into steam, what happens when you add water to oil? Attract each other, and it's because to yeah, it didn't say. But if you add to hot oil, okay, let's be even more specific here. All right, so there you go. I think that's it. Let's go ahead and share my screen so you see what you see what I'm talking about here. What happens when you add water to oil? Water will sink to the bottom of oil pan due to intensity. Sinking water will vaporize instantly into steam and expand rapidly in volume. Then oil is explosively expelled in all directions. If there's a fire source, the small oil droplets are then ignited to give a big fire. So that's what happened. I added oil into the fire, into the water, into the oil, and boom, I had a fire. And then I thought, this was phenomenal and awesome of me. I said, you know what? If I add more water, it should put out the fire. So hey, what do you think I did? I added more water, and what do you think happened to the fire? Oh no, there was still more fire. But that's the reason why I'm telling you the story is I'm not the person to come to talk about how to cook. Okay. If you're like, hey, I need to learn how to, sew, I'm not the person to talk to about learning how to sew. But if like, hey, I want to learn about business, I want to learn about marketing, and I do have some dating tips, but I don't talk about dating because people get offended really, really easily, and I don't want the people to get offended crowd to come. So business owners usually understand that life is hard, so we kind of relate on that matter. But when it comes about business, it comes about media stuff. Hey, when it comes about AI, let me talk to you, Manuel. I may not be overall expert at it, but I can share my opinions on it. That's why this is a podcast, not a university, right? So it's basically understanding in the sense as to what are you good at, what are you good at doing, and how can you use it to share value. So I'm going to share with you guys a few tips on creating content, right? So now we pretty much understand that you need to be creating content. We understand that for a fact that you need to be creating content. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. What type of content should you be creating? Okay, you need to be creating a content that has an end goal in mind. What does that mean? That means that this is I am creating a podcast. We have thousands of listeners on a monthly basis on Spotify, and we have thousands of people to watch us on YouTube. Okay, now the goal of this podcast is not to I promote stuff, but if people don't buy it, I don't lose sleep about it, right? But the goal of this podcast is to sow good seed. I don't know if at some point I'm like the seed is going to be a fruit, but if somebody at the end will benefits from it, then that's perfectly fine. So the goal of the podcast is not necessarily like, yeah, let's make some money from it. But if your goal is to generate or go online to build business, then you have to think about it from a perspective of one, it's a long-term game, and then two, there has to be a call to action at the end of everything. Okay. One thing I do learn about people is people do not like to be forced into doing things, and people do not like to be sold into things. They want to basically come from a position where they're making their own decisions, right? If I say, hey, do business with me, I'm not like, go click on the link. That's just very, very salesy. But I'm like, hey, listen, this is my job is to present you the information. And when I present you the information, your job is to decide if you want to move forward or not. You're an adult. Okay. You're an adult as you're watching me. We're not kids. Right. And usually, so if you're an adult watching me, you're capable of making your decision. But for you to make the right decision, you need the right information. My job is to gather the information, provide you the information, and then say A, B, C, which would you proceed? You're like, okay, I choose B. That's perfectly fine. That's good. That's my job, is to give you the information. That's how I see it. That's the same way you need to look at content. Your job is to give them the information and give them the ability to decide. We're like, hey, so in a way you have to think about it from a perspective of you need to be talking to emotional people and logical people, and then just share helpful tips. If you're a plumber, hey, this is how you fix a clogged toilet. This is what you do when you're dropping your kids off in the pool. If that's a slang for like if you go number two. This is how you do this. This is how you do it. You give simple tips. And when it comes to like, hey, if you have some complex work that you need done that you can't do, like a bathroom remodeling, then just go ahead and this are the tools that you need. This is usually how much it costs. If you want to learn more and you want an expert to come help you with the job and you don't want to go ahead and wreck your bathroom, then go ahead and give us a call. The number is going to be in the link in the description, or just go ahead and check out our website. It's a better call to action than like, hey, call now. That's more of if you're doing a direct advertising, if you're doing like a Facebook ad, yeah. But if you're doing a content ad, it's not the same. Content advertising and Facebook advertising is completely two different things. That's something I had to learn. I had to learn from a perspective of like, I can't be like, go click on the link in the description now. It's like, hey, listen, this is that. If you like what you hear and you believe this is going to be of value to you, click the link in the description. I don't have any links in the description, guys, so don't click any link. So this is basically it when you come talking about content. Content is something that you need to come at it from a perspective of, you know what, I'm just providing value, but not just value. I'm providing value to give you the ability to make an educated decision, right? And another thing is, so now then you have to post content. Then two, you have to be consistent at your content posting. Okay, you can't post whenever. I was watching this video and this girl was asking Gary Vee. This is where I disagree with Gary Vee. Gary Vee's a phenomenal guy. I watch him. I'm not having this artist come after me. She said, hey, what do I do when I'm not creative? And he's like, hey, it's fine if you don't post for a week or 2 weeks, for a month. I'm going to tell you guys a true story. So today has been a very interesting day. Okay, there's been things happening back to back, and I felt tired. I felt exhausted. I was beat. I was like, I don't feel like doing a live. It's late. I want to go to sleep. Okay, it's 10:30 p.m. And then I ran into, my girlfriend was like, well, I don't want to be the bad guy. I said, okay, well, what do you mean you don't want to be the bad guy? She goes, but you have not broken your streak of going live. You've gone live every day, regardless of what happened. Regardless of the time you woke up early, you did it. I was like, yeah, I did. So she's like, you can't break it for now for this. I was like, you're right. So I went ahead and did the live, and I had in my appointments, and I was like, you know what? Luckily, he was willing to reschedule, which is a friend of mine. And I was like, I had a meeting as well that I had to reschedule. And I'm like, hey, I was going to reschedule for tomorrow. She's like, and then I just thought to myself, I was like, you know what? How about we do the meeting at 11 p.m. So right after this, I'm going to do a meeting from 11, go finish that 11:30, finish some work, and probably be in bed by probably 12:30, 1 a.m. My day started at 5 this morning. I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep going, right? But the key thing is you have to be consistent. I'm not saying it to be like, oh my God, this guy is. I'm not saying it to brag, because the reality is there's people out there that probably someone's day who started at 3 a.m. that's working till 3 a.m. So I cannot say that, oh my God, the whole concept of oh, you work harder. It's all very relative, because my idea of work, and then there's some kid in Somalia or some kid in Kenya or some kid somewhere in the mines. Their concept of work and my concept of work completely two different things. So it's all relative. So whenever I can't even say like, oh my God, I work hard. No, I can't. You can't, because probably you watching this right now, probably working as you're watching this, right? Now, the reason why I'm bringing that to you is this has to be an element of consistency. You have to be consistent at it. If you're curious, you're like, oh my God, what do I make content about? Listen, when it comes to content and advertising are completely two different things. When it comes to content, it's about the person. When it comes to advertising, is about the product, how the product influences the person. This is for me, is for me and you to basically build a relationship and to build a friendship. Because in some way, I've had people run into me like, oh, hey, you know what? I watch your podcast. I'm like, you do? Really? Why? That's always my question. Like, why? They're like, because it's informational. I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. But because for me, I enjoy doing it, because for me, it's fun. I enjoy it. It's fun. When I see the fact that we're growing, we're getting almost to 1 million views on the channel. I love it. Okay. But I'm still going to keep showing up, because it's become who I am. Right. That's the thing, is you need to make content who you are. Just record the little things. Just you. Hey, you know what? I just showed up at work today. You don't know who might be watching and that might need your help or might need your service. You need your product. I ran into a friend of mine today, and she was like, hey, listen, I started a shoot thing called Tam Tams or toe tams, where it's like jingly, jingly, jingly in church, like jingly. And I'm like, she's like, yeah, I'm selling. She's like, it's selling for $12, but she sells about 1,000 to 2,000 of them a month. And I'm like, you have 1,000 to 2,000 people going to buy your product? She's like, yeah. And I was like, wow. Right. But the key thing is but the thing is she has been consistent. I know her. I've known her for a few years, and she posts every single day on TikTok. And I'm like, damn, jeez, kudos to you, salute. And now she's ripping the rewards from it, right? So that's the key thing is you just got to consistently show up, make you the content. The content's about your life because people want to resonate with you. People don't scroll through content. They're not scrolling through content to be like, oh, and this is why we are the best company. Yeah. No, they're scrolling through content to be like, you know what? I want to watch it because I know, you know what? I like talking to this guy. I like to listen to Emmanuel. The dude's got a really, really sexy voice. I mean, just geez, when he talks, it's like a radio voice. It's like, oh my God, I can't even let my wife watch him because of his voice. Just kidding, just kidding. Because people are gonna listen to this on on Spotify. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, go ahead and hit the like button. Go ahead and hit all the buttons that you're supposed to hit on Spotify. Follow, make sure you're following this as well, because if you're listening on Spotify, if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you are on any other platform, LinkedIn, because I'm streaming on LinkedIn, Facebook, if you're on Apple Pod, like the video. Well, it's an audio wherever you are. If it's a video, like the video. If it's an audio, like the audio. But at the end of the day, if you get into value, my goal is to basically provide value to you. And I just personally believe that you should be in a position in which you are basically using basically personal content. And another thing as well, I'll say this is you need to be on social media. 40% of businesses, only about 40% of businesses have no social media strategy. 40% of businesses have no social media strategy, which means they're just winging it. You have 40%. 40% of businesses have no social media strategy. Zero. They're just like, oh my God, I'm just going to post something. You have to be another thing is you have to be very intentional. I'm going to give you guys another tip. You have to be very intentional with your content. You have to be very intentional with what you do. I'll tell you guys one thing. One reason, most of you want to know why I go live every day? Because when I go live every day, I have content that I can use across, what would you even say? I have content I can use across, I'd say what, 300? Not over 300. I said 300. What do you call it? 10 platforms. We have content for YouTube. We can create shorts. We can create about 300 pieces of content from it. We can create shorts. We can create reels. We can create stuff for TikTok. We can create stuff for LinkedIn. We can create stuff for Twitter. We can create stuff for YouTube. We can create stuff for what do you call this stuff again? Spotify. We create some Apple Pod. We create stuff for Podcast Bean. We can create, but just this one video will be chopped into multiple pieces and spread across the different parts of the internet. Now, why am I bringing that to you, and why am I sharing that with you? I'm sharing that with you to understand that you can make a long form content, because the reality is only about maybe 25-30% of people are going to watch the whole video, but you make a long form content and just distribute it across multiple channels. Make sure people out there are actually seeing and getting your message. Make sure people are actually out there and seeing and understanding and that you have value to offer. Because the thing is this, I remember I had a call with this young lady, phenomenal person. We had an interaction. She was an insurance agent, and she was talking to me. She was like, hey, you know what? I need help getting leads. I've bought leads. I've done this. And I'm like, hey, are you comfortable going online and going on camera and actually just like talking and just providing value? And she goes, I'm camera shy. I don't want to be on camera. I said, okay, that's fair. Okay. So she's like, I don't want to be on camera. I was like, makes sense. I'm not, that's perfectly fine. We ended up not continuing doing business together because my whole persona, if you ever come to me and say, Emmanuel, I need to do marketing, we can use AI from left to right. But the reality of things is I like to work with people who aren't afraid to show their face to people that they're going to do business with. Because if you want that person to be a potential customer, a potential client, then at least have the balls, have the confidence to be like, you know what? I am going to help you. And if I'm going to help you, then at least I could do is at least have you see my face. And trust me, it works a lot better when people are jumping on a call with you, knowing that they watched the video, or they, I've had people jump on calls with me like, I watched, like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 episodes of your podcast. I was like, okay, all right. It just becomes easier for us to do business together, right? So have social media. That's one, because 40% of businesses don't have it. You don't, you pretty much a losing battle. Have social media, post content, just anything. Could be anything. Hey, I just woke up today, brushing my teeth. Start somewhere. Start with one post and just say, you know what, I'm going to post something, even though no one likes it, for the next 100 days. And then once you do, you got to get yourself comfortable. It's a new thing. It's like when you're learning to swim, just get in the water first. Get your feet wet. Once you get your feet wet, slowly but surely, everything else pretty much comes from there. Everything pretty much improves from there. That is the mindset and the persona that I want you guys to kind of, kind of play into as everything pretty much proceeds, right? So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what I have for you guys for creating content. One more thing before we basically wrap up is I want to go ahead and share this video, which is Alex Hormozi. Definitely, guys, go check out his book. If you're a business owner, I highly recommend you go check out this book. His new book that just came out, $100 Million Leads. I honestly haven't read it yet, but I'm going to get my copy and I'm going to read it. But check out the book, $100 Million Leads. But listen to what he's talking
The
about.
most important thing in sales, number one, above everything, and this is a strong statement for me to say, is frame, the context under which the conversation is happening. So you can be the most skilled salesperson in the world, and you will sell less than somebody who has a line out the door because of how much value they've provided every single person in that line. It doesn't matter if you're the best person in the world. Fewer people will buy from you if they've never met you, you've provided nothing to them. If you're trying to sell more, learning all the mechanics of sales, overcomes, etc., is worthwhile, is important, but you're missing the biggest one, which is you build brand, you provide value first so that you don't have to. The most important thing in sales,
and that's it.
Number one,
and what he's saying is, and that's it, is at the end of the day, we're all selling. If you're like, I'm not in sales, I don't like sales, sales is not for me, salespeople are this. I know that's kind of a little dramatic, but I'm going to say this. We're all in sales. When you are hitting your snooze button and you have to get out of bed to go to that work that either you like the work or you don't like the work, you'd rather be sleeping in. But when you have to hit that snooze button to go to work, you have to convince yourself that, you know what, I'm going to do this. You're selling yourself, because sales is a transference of belief. It's not really taking someone's money. It's a transference of belief. When you have to talk to that girl or that guy to go on a date with you, it's a transference of belief. And you have to sell them on why they should go out on a date with you. It's not that you're like, you're like, oh, well, you mean I have to go something? No, it's not. It's in a sense as to, you have to believe so strongly in yourself that they believe that them hanging out with you is not going to be a waste of their time. They're like, this person is like, hey, you know what? Let's go out. I don't drink, so let's go out for dinner. Let's go out, hang out. Let's go play golf, right? Let's go to Top Golf. Let's go to Top Golf. It's in a sense as to, it's an invite in the sense as to, you believe so strongly in yourself, like, hey, this is not going to be a waste of your time and you're going to get value from this. So let's go do it. Right. It's the same thing as when you're talking to a customer, when you're talking to your kids, and your kids have to eat. You're like, eat your veggies. Like, no, mom, I want to eat my veggies. No, I don't want to do it. It's the same thing. It's like when you are coming from a position where you know how to influence the human mind for the greater good, then you're like, you know what? I am actually doing them a favor by getting them to eat this, because they know that you're getting their nutrients. And when you strongly believe that, you will transfer that belief versus spanking the kid. It's up to you. But that's basically it, is build a brand. When you build a brand is important. Building brand is important because brand is basically your identity. You want people to think about you. When I say, I'm going to say a few words. I want you guys to, a few brands. I want you guys to tell me what you think when I say Amazon, online shopping. Okay. What is the other one again? eBay, online shopping. What else do we have again? Nike, shoe. Tesla, car. Volkswagen, car. What else do we got? We have Nestle, right? Water, food, right? Grocery stores, get food. Those are things in which you identify. You basically identify with what they do, who they are. They've consistently showed up for this same product. That is who they are. And then you're like, you know what? Boom. That's it. That's that person. Right. So that is kind of the concept and the persona and the personality that I want you guys to think of. So that's pretty much what I have for you guys. It's gonna be a short one because, like I said, guys, I have to jump off for a meeting. I know who does meetings at 11 p.m. Yours truly, because the work never stops. The work never stops not because work is bad, but because I enjoy the work. You have to enjoy. You have to love it because it has to become part of you. People complain about, oh my God, I have to work today. That's because when you complain about work, I know I'm kind of side noting, it's because you don't understand that the work is not about finishing work. Because when I finish work, I find more work to do. It's not about finishing work. It's about enjoying the work because you find yourself in the work. True, you doing the work is where you actually will get the value just by you doing the work. The work is where the fulfillment is. You know what they say? People who love to run will run further than someone who runs just to run a mile. Okay, if I love to run and you run, if I love to run and we have to run 10 miles, I will run further and I will run faster and I will have more endurance than you if you're running just because you want to run 10 miles. Because I love the running. That's the same thing. Is you just got to love the work. Same thing. You got to become somebody who does. And that's all I have for you guys. We're going to end this. Like I said, we're going to end this a little bit early. Go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and please share with someone if you believe this video was of value to them. And, thanks again. Appreciate everybody being on. And like I said,